In the 1960s, people watching television news were stunned by the images of police using fire hoses to spray the members of the civil rights movement. They were even more stunned to see the police batons and police dogs used against the people practicing nonviolent resistance for freedom. Ordinary Americans were both shocked and moved while lending their support behind the civil rights movement. Once again, people were shocked and moved by the 8 minutes and 40 seconds video of George Floyd. As it is horrifying to watch, something has happened to the collective souls of all people that have galvanized the people into strong and immediate action. Similarly, Jesus was also moved by a sense of compassion for the people, especially the most vulnerable members of his society in and around Galilee. Jesus had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless. In Greek, the image of the word describes how they were oppressed and thrown to the ground. Furthermore, Jesus saw the people who came to see him like sheep without a shepherd, meaning that they were easy prey for the predators because they had no protection whatsoever. In Canada, we take great pride in our nation, but our history also reveals systematic evil and oppression. First Nations people were easy to dominate because they did not develop immunity against the diseases that the Europeans brought over. They also did not have the firepower of guns and steel, so they were no match militarily. Having been defeated, they also had no political power. They were colonized, subdued, oppressed, and exploited. It was systematic and it was relentless. They had no recourse to fight back. They could not even hire lawyers to help them fight against all the unlawful laws that were imposed on them. Why? Because Canadian government also passed a law that said if a lawyer represents the First Nations people, then he would be automatically disbarred. This law was in place until the 1950s. Talk about systematic oppression. Jesus' response was that he felt compassion for the helpless. He chose not to stand with the powerful, but rather with the weak, the poor, the sick, and the helpless. He responded to the challenges. As the Bible states, Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness. Yet, that was not enough. So he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." So when Jesus said, "Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest," essentially this is a prayer, asking God to help and to empower the workers to do God's will. How can God refuse such a prayer, especially when their hearts were aligned with God's intentions for humanity? Jesus then summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and cure every disease and every sickness. 18-year-old teenager Antonio Gwynn Jr. saw that after the protests in his city of Buffalo, that there was a lot of garbages and glass on the streets that needed cleaning up. He too was moved with a sense of compassion. He wanted the streets to be clean for the people to go to work safely the next day. So he bought garbage bags and took his broom to the street at 2 in the morning, and he did not stop for the next 10 hours. A community group came in the morning to clean up as well, but they saw that most of the work had already been done. The story does not end there. A man donated his prized Mustang convertible to the teenager, and an insurance broker who had heard about the story offered him a free insurance for 1 year, and a college offered him a full scholarship. Gwyn wants to study business and open a cleaning business afterwards. We all get moved by these kinds of stories. It all begins with a heart willing to be moved by compassion. Jesus still sends us out on a mission to respond to the needs of the people in the community. People have responded to such calls throughout Christian history. Seemingly impossible things have been done by ordinary members of the church. Incurable diseases have been eradicated. Unjust laws have been overturned. Closed doors have been opened for the marginalized people. People all over the world have responded to the death of George Floyd, and they are calling out for a transformational changes. May we also feel compassion for the vulnerable people, such as the First Nations people, the refugees in our community, and those who are facing systematic racism that still pervades in our country and our world. From this place of compassion, may we be receptive to God's Spirit who works in us and through us. God is seeking new servants to the field with the power of the Holy Spirit and the authority to serve one another. May we not be afraid, as it is the Spirit of God who is leading us out. Thanks be to God.